I'm in Talmeen in Sutherland on the edge of the A'Mhoine. Arguably Britain's last wilderness, the last place that we haven't done anything to. There's a tiny slipway and there's the hulk of a boat up on the beach, and there are a few houses and crofts. There's even a tiny little post office and a shop. It's not that it's completely empty everywhere, except behind me, for miles and miles and miles and miles, it really is. This is where, on the A'Mhoine Peninsula, it is intended to build Britain's first spaceport. It does, admittedly, look a bit like the moon at this time of the year. It's very beautiful, but it's very brown and grey. It's like another world. So why come to this extraordinary, wildest of landscapes here in Sutherland, in the far, far, far north of Scotland, and then go to space? This is heaven already. Why not stay here?
Well, you're looking here at Castlebarry. It was an ancient sort of medieval fort. Well, it's sort of
on the top of the headland.
On the top of the headland,
like a broken tooth, like a proper castle should be.
Like a broken tooth. It absolutely does look like a broken tooth. And then beyond that is the main road that goes round the coastal road, and that's the mowing that you see in the distance there.
Behind you,
that's Ben
I mean, that's mountains.
That's the Queen of Scottish Mountains. That's Ben Loyal.
Very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Very steep, proper mountainy.
Very mountainy. And in the distance over this hill here, you'll see just the tip of Ben Hope.
Yeah.
And that's Munro. It's a higher mountain actually than Ben Loyal, but not as pretty, I think. Ben Loyal's very dramatic looking mountains.
Having just done a brilliant job of telling us where we are, who are you?
Well, I'm a retired teacher.
Dorothy Pritchard.
Dorothy Pritchard, a retired teacher, and I taught in Tongue Primary School for just almost 20 years.
Did you?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And what's your involvement with the spaceport?
Well, my involvement is that I'm the chairperson of the Melniscrofters Estate Board of Directors. It's owned by about 56 members of the estate, and they're the owners of the land, and I'm the chairperson of the board of directors.
So I can't get together with my neighbours and say, let's have a spaceport. What happened? How did it come to be?
What happened was we were approached by Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and different places had to bid for it. And our bid was successful. And I suppose the location to get into the orbits and the polar orbits that's made it a sort of key site, really.
Why did you want the spaceport? I've got to sort of say spaceport. Why did you think this, well, we would like this to happen?
Well, first of all, we were interested because when you're representing 56 people, you can't just say no to anything, you have to investigate it. Although it's very beautiful here, economically it's really in decline. There are no jobs to retain our young people. We have falling school rolls, we've fading infrastructure. We've just lost our bank. Highland Council find it very difficult to sort of spend any money in areas like this. So we really have an economic decline, and I think that's why we sort of need the spaceport.
Yeah.
And we don't want something big and industrial. It isn't going to be like that. It's going to be quite a small scale thing.
Yeah.
And that'll all come out in planning. This is only the very initial stages.
Yeah.
So it has to go to planning and be scrutinised there.
When you say falling school rolls, excuse my ignorance, I live in mid-Wales, and money is allocated by the Welsh Assembly according to school rolls. Is there a similar thing here?
Well, we have allocations, yes, but it's not that. It's that there's no jobs to sustain young families here. In the last year, we've lost about 7 children from the area, parents that have gone in the 70s. I grew up here, I'm from this area. The school roll then, I think, would probably be in the 50s, and now we're lucky if we have 15 children in the school. And I think this sort of opportunity would offer high-tech kind of jobs right along the coast, really, as far as Doonry as well is in decline. The oil industry was another major sort of employer for young families here. Even that's been cut back.
Got any idea about, numbers, how many jobs?
I can't say about money. I'm not going to think, but numbers, they're thinking for this area, 40 jobs and 400 overall.
So you depopulate, everyone goes, holiday homes come in.
Yeah, and then there's nobody to support an ageing population because they're looking for carers, they're looking for, well, if everyone's old, you're not going to have any carers. So you need that balance. Every community needs a balance of age groups to really thrive, and then we just don't have that yet.
Yeah.
That's a
So
huge
I'm a
value.
60-year-old bloke. If
Yeah.
I rocked up here with my wife,
Oh, we'd be delighted to see you.
Yeah,
If you
but-
could bring your children with their children.
yes.
That's honestly when we hear, whenever I hear, oh, there's somebody new coming. What age are they? There's the first question. What age are they? Have they got children? Are they capable of having children? You see, that's your first question. My friend, she calls them, I said, a breeding pair. You know, like. Joking aside, that really is, you do think that like that. Maybe it's because I'm a teacher, I've always been thought like that. But
Because the countryside can't be set in aspic.
No,
It's a place
no.
where people live and work.
people live
isn't it?
and work, and you need jobs in the countryside as
Yeah,
well.
of course
You don't
you do.
just live on fresh air and nice views. It doesn't work like that. The way the countryside is because of the people who have lived here and managed it. And there's lots of crofters, they have sheep, they have stock, and that's not going to change. They're not going to be taken off that area. There'll be sheep grazing, there'll be deer roaming. That's not going to change.
And rockets going into
And
space.
rockets going into space, yeah.
Bogs have an image problem. You know, you're bogged down in this or you're mired in that. You get sucked down into it. It's the Hound of the Baskervilles thing. You're running away from creatures and someone's shaking you, fall and splat and you're being sucked down. All of that is just bog. Who cares about bogs? Why not build a spaceport here? That's the thing. It's a bog. Let's have a spaceport. A 40-minute drive south of here on single-track roads is the RSPB reserve at Forcenard, the largest reserve in the UK, actually, where I'm going to meet people who really know the value of bogs. And welcome to open country, and it doesn't get more country or more open than this. I'm in the flow country of Caithness and Sutherland with Caroline Eccles and Garrode Murphy. If you see a bog on a film, they look like this. It's like a mosaic of tiny little pools, and because I'm not a naturalist, I want to say heather, but I feel that you're going to leap on me and say, no, not heather.
Well, there is heather,
Yeah.
but there are lots of other heathy plants as well. But actually the plant that's making up the main mosaic of the place is the tiny moss, the sphagnum moss. That's probably the most important plant that's here.
Yeah.
That's the one that builds the peat.
And in some places it can go over to 8 to 10 metres deep. Other places it's much shallower than that. If you try to drive over it with a vehicle, if you puncture the surface, you can sink. But walking across it is more or less okay.
There's a group of red deer disappearing over the horizon. What is the flow country?
It's a huge area of landscape that's covered by blanket bog. At the moment, we're in the progress of trying to get it designated as a World Heritage Site, which is a UNESCO designation, along with, say, the Grand Canyon, and that's because we think it is of world importance. So peatland itself is rare. There's maybe 3% of the world land surface is peatland, and of that, only a tiny proportion. There's this particular sort called blanket bog, and it's got lots of special birds that depend on it and special plants that don't really live in other places. And then the other thing is that it's a carbon store. So when plants grow, they take in carbon dioxide. And then when they die, what normally happens is that all decomposes and disappears. But in peat, the plants haven't fully decomposed, so that carbon is locked in the peat.
Yeah.
So we need to keep that carbon locked up.
Your bog, is it squelchy?
Oh, very squelchy.
Is it?
So this is Bog Michael.
Yeah.
So it's got leaves that they got this wonderful aroma that when you crush them, it's like menthol. And prior to having hops, it was used to flavour beer. And it also acts as a natural insect repellent for repelling midges, which is also one of the most numerous invertebrates found in the flow country. You can see these are all the leaves here. The actual plant that forms the peat is the sphagnum moss, which is this kind of little low-growing plant here. It's got a higher liquid content than milk. So
Shut up. Has it? Honestly?
yeah, apparently,
Really?
yeah. And you got a vegetation.
That's fantastic.
You got the vegetation covering it, and that's the kind of skin that's kind of stopping you sinking into the peat. But yeah, a very wet landscape, particularly this kind of time of year when the water level is more or less near at the surface.
Wherever I step, I'm killing something, actually. Aren't I? It's like a beautiful miniature world.
It is. It's its own like little micro ecosystem down here. All the diversity is all down here at your kind of at ankle level.
And you have insectivorous plants as well.
You do have insectivorous plants. So the two main ones would be the sundews and the butterworts. So they don't eat the insects as such. What they're doing is they're digesting them to get nitrates from their body.
If something's digesting you, that's a bit like eating, isn't it?
It's only eating part of you.
Oh, all right.
It's leaving the rest.
Live afterwards, do they?
No.
No, they don't.
So the proposal is that in this landscape, the British are going to build a spaceport. I guess any development here, major development, is going to impact on this landscape.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's a really special landscape. As we've been describing, it's of national and international importance. So we would really have to look at that really carefully and see, does it impact in a negative way, or can it be accommodated sustainably?
Yeah.
It's a significant issue.
If I was to fall into the bog, would people find me in 10,000 years and go, we think he kept this square phone-like thing for ceremonial purposes? And
That's certainly possible because the peat is so wet, because it's very acidic. It's perfect conditions for preserving organic matter, including human tissue. And they've found perfectly preserved bog bodies in bogs throughout Europe, including in Britain. And they believe these are human sacrifices to whatever deity. The leading theory is that these may have been political figures or leaders because their skin is preserved so perfectly. You can see that they've done very little work, they've done very little manual labour, so they must have been high ranking. And
radio presenters and writers, look. So they'd think the same about me, wouldn't they?
So if we sacrifice them in this kind of landscape, you might please the gods and, we can have wine growing again.
Makes perfect sense. Why don't we give it a go? There's a car coming.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
He's going to be quite surprised
He's going to win the
as he comes past
He sure is, yeah.
to see three people huddled together in
yeah.
almost absolute darkness, one of them holding a microphone.
Yeah. The last time that happened to me was in Caithness when I went to a meeting of the Caithness Astronomy Group. And on my way back, I kept passing rodaines like this. And in each rodaine, there were two people standing, one of them holding a gun. And I thought,
Grief.
this is very strange. The Dounreay UKAE power plant, which is being decommissioned, was in the process of sending enriched uranium off to America by aeroplane, and they were transporting it at night. And every rodaine had an armed guard, but that's got nothing to do with this.
Well, I don't know, because this is a high-tech coast, at least sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, that's absolutely true. And indeed, they see the coming of the new technology, the space technology, as rescue, really, for some of their more qualified staff.
I'm with Jim Johnston. The A'Mhoine community has made this bid to build a spaceport in this extraordinary place.
At the moment, the spaceport here is getting the support of the British government, and that's, from my point of view, a good thing. But I'm not speaking here on behalf of the Caithness Astronomy Group, who have a neutral view on whether it should go ahead or not. But from a personal viewpoint, I think it would be advantageous to the local economy and also a further attraction to bring people in a touristy kind of way.
Yeah.
Because it would be the only spaceport in the British Isles, and that would be a fantastic draw, I think.
At the moment, humankind is doing quite well, it seems to me, with space. We've just done the Ultima Thule flyby.
Yeah,
The Chinese are on the far side of the moon,
amazingly so, yes.
isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You never know. 5-10 years, we might be standing out here on the Moyne and rockets going up.
You might see rockets going up, yeah. Well, one of the amazing things I think about the rockets that are planned here is that they're actually quite small. They're only about 10 metres in height and maybe
really?
a metre in diameter.
So they're not. It's not Saturn V we're talking.
Absolutely not. No. The big launch vehicles will, I think, always be launched from nearer to the equator than this. But what these ones are going to do is put very small satellites into the sky And it enables like universities and research areas to put instruments up, which would be impossibly expensive without this kind of facility. And some of them are stunningly small. There's one called CubeSats, which are only 10 centimetres along each side.
Really?
Yeah,
As small as that?
Well, I found it astounding.
Isn't
yes.
it?
Aye. They're about maybe slightly bigger than a Rubik Cube.
Gosh.
I asked the guys how that could be of any possible use. And they said it's like having a mobile phone in space. You can reclaim information from it without the slightest difficulty. So
We live in the future without noticing. Somehow
true.
we've arrived in the future.
the future is constantly arriving, yeah.
Yeah. This is where the spaceport is projected to be.
Yes, down in that slightly lower land in between here and the coast.
I'm with John Williams, and what do you feel about it?
I feel that the possible benefits of having a spaceport here are not matched by the likely drawbacks. If you build a launch pad in this environment, you will do serious damage to the flow country. That damage will last for centuries at least. The benefits might, if you're lucky, last 70 years or so.
What do you say to the people who talk about jobs for the young people?
Well, I think that they are wildly optimistic. Yes, there might be some jobs in the area, some maintenance people to keep the roads clear of snow and ice, but 40 jobs full-time, it's hard to see. There will be jobs for very highly skilled satellite technicians and satellite engineers, but I suspect they'll be down in Surrey or across in America, not here. There are better places for rockets.
Such as, for example, Cape Wrath? Is
There is
shooting range?
There is a military shooting facility at Cape Wrath,
Yeah.
but probably not. I think possibly the best place for launching satellites into low Earth orbits from Britain might well be in Shetland.
On Unst, Saxavord.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been to Saxavord. There was satellite tracking, and that's
Right.
what Saxavord
And
did.
they've got some infrastructure there already, and people that are keen on the idea.
But then, of course, there are people who are keen on the idea here too.
That's true, but here is badly split. I mean, there's quite a lot of quite uncomfortable bad feeling here at the moment. I mean, that has happened. Whatever happens with the rockets, that bad feeling is going to last for the rest of the individual's lifetimes, I think. That is not going to
Welcome
disappear.
to 2019 in the UK.
Right, yes, but you might be in some cases talking about welcome to 2070 in the UK.
Yeah.
Not in mine, but for some people this could be an uncomfortable scenario that goes on for a long, long time.
So, tell me about Protect the Moyne. Which is
Well, Protect the Moyne is a voluntary organisation open to all. It is not anti-rocket, it is not anti-anybody, but it is in favour of protecting the Moyne. Membership stretches mainly locally, obviously, but there are people in other places as well.
how many people do you
Actively involved, something around 30 or 40. They don't all have the same grounds for objections. There are several people that are deeply concerned about bees, and bumblebees in particular. There are other people who are not at all informed about bees, and I'm one of them. But we don't like the idea that the whole place is long-term wrecked for short-term gain. And then there are other people with other views again, including the conspiracy theorists who see low Earth orbit satellites as militaristic and thoroughly nasty, objectionable, and please go away and do it now. I'm not saying that they would be used for that,
Yeah.
but it is possible to use them for that.
Yeah. It's extraordinary to be talking to you about this surveillance and war and defence contractors in this remarkable wilderness, the closest thing to heaven I've probably been to.
Well, it is a pawn in the global battlefield already, because the Russians do overfly and the Lossy Bath boys come and chase them off.
There's lots of ducks, which implies that we're in the middle of the countryside, but no, we're in Inverness with DavidOxley from Highlands and Islands Enterprise. Why space?
Often when we look for inward investment, we have challenges in the region due to lack of population. In terms of space, you're going straight north across open water pretty much. Geographically, it's the best place to do it in the whole of the UK, if not if the best place in the whole of Europe.
It is the middle of nowhere.
The transport that we are looking at will be able to access through the normal roads infrastructure. We are talking about launches that are 17 metres long, so they can be transported on normal articulated lorry type environment, so no particular challenges in terms of that. The High Board considered the Sutherland facility was the preferred route to go by. The launchers that we are working in tandem with, which is Lockheed Martin and Orbital Express, they've got the technology ready to go. We're working closely with them. They are tied into Sutherland as a site through the UK Space Agency call.
The UK Space Agency have put some money in, haven't they?
UK Space Agency have put just over £2 million into the Sutherland facility. The total cost of the project we anticipate to be just over £17 million. We're working through that process now.
Yeah. You'll have done an ecological audit.
We are working through the environmental studies, working through the bird studies. These will be absolutely important. We recognise that people will have their concerns around that, and we're so taking that aspect very, very seriously. These will all be informed by the planning process, and we're making sure we've got all the information to hand to make sure that we know what any potential impact is.
How many jobs do you think? Jobs, if you like, for Tongue and the North Coast?
So we anticipate that there will be in the region of 40 jobs.
Permanent jobs?
Permanent jobs, high quality jobs.
In the Highlands?
In the North Sutherland, Caithness area as a minimum. In the wider Highlands and Islands we anticipate 400 jobs. That's a really important aspect and the reason why we're doing this.
Have you been up there?
I've not been up there personally, but my colleagues have been up there several times. I'm planning to go up very soon.
Yeah. It's quite bold, isn't it? You know, that place is untouched since the Ice Age. It's quite a big responsibility to say, OK, we are humans and we're going to put this footprint here where there has been no footprint before.
Yeah, I understand that, but we have to think about what the future is as well as what the past has been. And the opportunities that will come out of space can be transformational for Sutherland.
Will there be anything where they say, no, there's an orchid or a bee or, you know, how far have you got on?
So we've been
those?
doing the environmental studies for well over a year now, including bird surveys. At this present time, there is nothing coming out of those which gives us any major cause for concern.
Sea eagles?
There are no sea eagles, no white eagles in the area.
That's really interesting.
Not nesting in the area.
The locals say that there's a couple of sites, or what?
There are not. We have got the bird surveys which confirm that is not the case. We believe that we can build this facility to ensure that we have the right environmental concerns dealt with appropriately and really grow the economy of the Sutherland region.
This bit of road, the North Coast Road, is part of the North Coast 500, this big circular road trip that goes around the north of Scotland that's proved hugely, hugely popular. Loads and loads of camper vans, loads of fast cars using it on roads that aren't really suitable. But what it's brought, it's been very good for the hotel trade. But does that bring long-term jobs? And is that the best way to care for the environment, to have loads of camper vans and Lamborghinis rattling through? I don't know. But that's what's here. People on their way from John O'Groats to Land's End and people rattling round the North Coast 500. Because there aren't that many options. There's the old traditional things of crofting. You know, everyone's got half a dozen jobs at least, you know, but the population has dropped here by about 40% in the last 100 years. Everywhere there are abandoned crofts, there are lots of holiday homes. Is that what an area needs? Otherwise it becomes a wilderness in every sense, really. And as you lose your population, what's left? That's not a lived-in landscape anymore. That's just abandoned. That might as well be the far side of the moon.